Welcome.
Hello and welcome to OzLoL Podcast, episode 63. Just as the other guys are killing themselves laughing with, I don't know, being goofs. We're live on twitch.tv/TForce Podcast, so make sure you come check us out Mondays from about 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. The two guys joining me this week, Steve Clerical Garstone and Scott Ranconius Rankin.
Were you about to call me Stephen Pennebianco Garstone? Is that what
something like that. Just get muddled. And of course we've got Ramus. If you haven't watching the Twitch, we've got Ramus. GB Ramus, who actually looks like one of the characters from that Dumb Ways to Die video. So you make sure you come check out the VOD. YouTube. YouTube.com/TForce Podcast, I think it is, something like that. So yeah. Anyway, we put up the VODs, we tweet, all of that. So sorry, Steve.
See, you didn't tell me before we went live that you were doing this, so now I have to load up the stream. So if my cam load
just
lags,
make sure it's
it's
on silence, otherwise you'll be confused by 2 rounds of voices. It's quite I mean, as someone who lives with voices in his head, I know it's confusing. So just saying.
We're off to a great start.
Yeah, we are. All right, so make sure we are sponsored by the Trinity Force Podcast. So go to trinityforcepodcast.com and check out all the podcasts in our network, which is the T-Force proper, the T-Force LCS Rundown, and of course ourselves. We also have Battle Arena this Thursday from around 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. That's on this channel. So come and join it. You can join the OzLoL chat in the client, and that will give you all the details you need to know to participate. It's open from bronze to gold. And yep, we're looking for questions. So we really want your listener questions. But basically, the next few months, it's going to be all quiet on the esports front. It's going to be, relatively quiet on until the actual preseason stuff actually comes out in a couple of months. It's going to be pretty quiet there also. So make sure if you have any questions, if there's anything you want to know, let us know, and we'll try and talk about it on air.
And we'll be bringing back an old segment. This news just in, wild speculation, as we have nothing but PvE notes to talk about. There's
nothing but speculation to be had.
Well, I mean, we could just force people to watch the Twitch stream, and then they could just be 45 minutes of me dancing. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, okay. Maybe one week I'll change the we'll have some, I don't know, techno music or something, and we'll have a dance off, a bit like they have on Triple J. So I just don't want to put you all to shame with my good dancing. I just putting it out there.
Bitch, please.
Bad dancing is the new good dancing. What do you want?
Now, actually, something which the stream missed last week, and I forgot to bring up again because I just forgot. But I just wanted to give another big thanks to our former host, Ralph Vesputi Pennebianco, who will be no longer joining us. A special thanks to him. He's just he put in a lot of work and made a really big contribution to the show. And he's moving on to other things, bigger things, probably to do with Heroes of the Storm. So if we find out if he decides to get involved in any content creation, we'll make sure we let you know, because he's a cool dude, and hopefully we can lure him back for a Christmas party, because we actually now need to start planning that. So if you have any suggestions for our Christmas party for the OzLoL podcast, suggestions for guests, we'll have some.
Could be a big guest.
Yeah. So we'll try and make it happen. So. All right, and with that, that's all the show news. Let's move into some real news. So first thing that makes my heart very glad, because I love the when this happens, but Riot have updated the champion, basically all the champions. They're updating the schedule. So I'm just putting the Twitch chat. There we go. So they've announced already that Maokai is having a visual update. Basically, the model is being somewhat rejiggered, a bit like Singe was recently done. So they're essentially the same, but they're just updating the model to make it a little bit nicer. And they've mentioned that Tristana is also going to have a similar sort of thing done, with a little bit of gameplay. And Poppy is obviously going to have a huge rework, with Scion-esque rework. So what do you guys reckon? How excited, out of a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you about this sort of stuff?
I would say 5.
Okay.
The visual reworks have always really excited me until they made Karthus completely green and blue. And then I just went, it really annoyed me when they did that. Poppy definitely needs it. I really didn't think Maokai needed it, but like if you ever look at the animations on his, like his soccer skin, he actually looks quite fluid and quite cool. So,
I mean, I don't think they're changing any of his actual movements. I think it's just the kind of the outer shell, a bit like Singe. Like Singe just got all the same voiceover, same animations, but they just. Well, Twitch didn't have feet, so they had to put feet on him. But
Carthus didn't have feet either. So
yeah, it's true. Well, he floats, so to be fair, it's probably not a problem. So a bit like Singe, what we saw in patch 4.19, where Singe just got a nice little new model, but otherwise it's the same everything.
Yeah. Well, it's good, and it's probably a good time of the year to do it. Now, there's actually some slight balance changes that they can make in this, because they've said previously that some skins aren't possible because they would add additional particles and make the size of champions bigger or smaller, and then that affects the balance of that champion. So the hitboxes never change. So this is an opportunity to, if they want to make Maokai slightly slimmer or bigger to make him an easier or harder to hit target, they could do something like that. Tristana, I'm going to welcome that. I have no problem with the way Tristana looks, but I would definitely welcome a revamp.
Well, to
it's
quote
also saying for Trist a gameplay update as well, so she's not just getting the visual update. I'll be interested to see how that is, because currently she's feeling, and over the last 2 seasons, she's sort of seen, even in LCS last season, not the season just one before, she did see a little bit of play. On and off. It was kind of like when Varus come in and Draven were the 2 big things. Tristana was like in and around that mix and filled an interesting kind of niche back then. Then she's come back to the fore, obviously as heavy as she exploded on the world stage and everything. But yeah, no, I'm really, really keen for the Poppy update, because who doesn't want to play Lollipoppy?
Optimus Tom, that's who doesn't want to play it. I'm just being a host from the T-Force LCS rundown. There you go, another plug I've slipped in there.
Nice.
So with the Tristana, so if you go to the dev blog, which is actually mentioned in that support article, it says that while we're at it, we're taking it. This is about Tristana. While we're at it, we're taking a light pass at her gameplay, focusing on adding a bit of spice to her E, increasing her ability interactions, and fleshing out her strategic niche amongst the roster of marksmen, markswomen. So it sounds like basically they're initially going to make her look distinctively Yordle as well. So it looks like it's going to be a
Mark's Lady Yordles.
Yeah, Mark's Lady Yordles. So it looks like there's going to be, a bit of substance to that update. Unlike, Maokai is just going to be purely visual. Poppy, what I'd love to see with the Tristana changes, I'd love to see her get rid of the AP Tristana, because I think AP Tristana is a bit like AP Yi and Cyan, where there's just zero interaction. It's just, she all-ins you repeatedly, and it's just no fun. So I'm hoping that they can sort of maybe make that disappear. And... Sorry, I'm just being distracted. My wife's calling me into the answering machine and she's yelling at me. That's not good. Anyway, Poppy. So, what do you guys... Where do you think they could take Poppy? Like, what do you think they could do to Poppy to make her better?
Well, I think one of Poppy's biggest disadvantages is the poor laning phase. Like, Poppy's kit is not necessarily, like, weak at anything in the mid-game, late-game. Like, it's all...
No way.
Sorry?
No way, she's so strong. Like, if there's one champion you cannot peel in the late game, it is Poppy.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing, is you can't really buff Poppy in the laning phase without kind of making her completely ridiculous for all other aspects of the game. When I'm trying to remember which game it was, but the opposing team locked in Mundo, and then we got to see a professionally played Poppy for the first time. I want to say it's probably not ever, because I'm sure someone's trolled professionally previously, but this was actually like a legitimate Poppy is a good pick for this scenario, because Mundo isn't going to be a problem in lane. And Poppy went to work in that game. It was really good. So I think Poppy's always had a problem of just being completely unviable, because if she was viable, she'd break the game.
Yeah, I think... If they take away her passive... a lot of her power is in that passive, and a lot of the irritating factors in the passive.
It's hidden power.
Yeah, it's hidden power.
Like if you're not familiar with Poppy, and we should probably talk about this with the listeners anyway. Like, if if you've never faced a Poppy before, or you've never played Poppy before, say you're level 24, or even you're playing ranked and she never gets played, all of a sudden you come across one and you have no idea why she didn't die then.
Yeah.
Like, you blew all your cooldowns, you blew all your burst, your
Yeah.
ignite was on, everything. How the hell did she live? And you have no idea. Nothing will come up on, on your death review.
Yeah.
You'd only find out by googling it and looking up the abilities or playing Poppy and reading the passive, and that's the. What's the? Does anyone have the actual exact text handy? But it's basically the lower health you are, the less.
Yeah,
damage
anything
you take.
that basically, I think it's something like when you deal something like something that's more than 50% of her remaining health, it reduces the damage or it negates the damage or something like that. So basically, when the lower she gets on health, the less damage she takes. It's sort of like a what do you call it? Where's the? I don't know. There's
Got
a
it
nice
right in
thing.
front of me.
Diminishing returns on damage.
Yeah, something like that.
Here we go.
Her-
All physical. Yeah, I've got the exact wording here. All physical and magical damage dealt to Poppy that exceeds 10% of her current health is reduced by 50%.
There you go.
Does not reduce damage from structures, so
Yeah.
there's something at least.
Well, that's what she's got an ultimate for, to ignore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And for those who don't know what diplomatic immunity, her ultimate is,
Oh, yeah.
Poppy focuses intently on a single enemy champion, dealing amplified damage to them and becoming immune to all damage and abilities from enemies other than her target, including the tower, including minions, not including the Nexus, for anyone trying to get clever. But
Yeah.
you get a rude shock like I did on Tryndamere. Oh, apparently I can't live through that.
Yep. The other thing is, so she gets increased damage and armor when she receives or deals damage, which is also another hidden power thing. And she actually, her Q's actually does like a crap ton of damage. Like it's, maximum health damage and bonus magic damage. So like an AP Poppy just blows you up. So hopefully, I hope they keep her ult because I think her ult is actually really interesting and it's.
It's kind of iconic to the character.
Yeah. Like I hope they get rid of that.
She's a diplomat. Like what is it? Poppy, the Iron Ambassador, and the move's called diplomatic immunity.
Yeah.
And when you think of Poppy, that's exactly what you think of.
Yeah.
Sometimes your mind will go straight to that completely overpowered / kind of useless passive, but like it's either one or the other depending on the scenario. But but that doesn't seem particularly integral to her playstyle at all, and it doesn't really make all that much sense on how it works. So, like, if that was on someone, like, if this was Olaf's passive, someone who's, like, the more you hit me, the angrier I get, or something like that.
Oh,
if it was a champion like that,
Yep.
like, the person who is fueled by being on low health, then that would kind of make sense. On Poppy, I don't think it really fits. So, that's one area that could balance her, but it's kind of one of the big parts of why she's so dominant in the team fights and picking off the AD carry and such.
Yep. And so I think it's her W and her passive that give you just so much power that it's hard to measure. But yeah, her knockback and her dip ult, I think they should stay. And I think that from what it sounds like from Red Posts I've read, it sounds like those are the sorts of things they're going to keep and they're going to look at the rest of it. So, and she just looks like crap as well. So hopefully they'll make her look cool as well.
Yeah.
All right. So also worth mentioning in terms of the update side of things is the interactive Summoners Rift map. So again, put the link in the Twitch chat. So basically, you can now go to the website and it will have basically the entire new Summoners Rift map with little plus signs where you can go and check to see all the different details of all the new things. So worth noting, the Death Brush, as it is the brush that's in the river, has its own little thing. It doesn't have a marking, but if you go there, it talks about not face checking it.
Do not face check the brush.
Yeah.
I'm just loading that bit now and I see what it says.
Yeah.
Do not face check this
don't
brush.
You'll die and your team will all be like, "What the fuck, dude? Trust us."
Yeah.
That is why. That's my favorite brush in the game.
Yeah.
Like you put a ward in there all the time. If they
It's-
clear
it's-
it doesn't matter. You put another one in there.
It's even better when, Skarner walks in there and it's Skarner, and it's that bush in particular.
Oh, I've got to have that happen. I've played so much Skarner and I've never had that happen. Because you got to stay in the bush for like a good amount of time to get that to happen.
Yeah, but that requires dedication from you on the Skarner player, and that dedication to that bush is important.
Yes, but I have dedication to not wasting my freaking time. That's so I'm always handicapped by that.
Well, actually, I got two more things in the scene. Hang on, there we go. I just moved to the thing in the document. We should mention also there's a great new article by News of Legends called the Pre-Seasons for Dummies. So make sure you check. We'll put it again in the Twitch chat and in the show news. Basically, it has all the changes, which is particularly good for the jungle changes because there's quite a bit there. So make sure you check that out. If we're going to be talking about this again in the future, not too distant future, I imagine. And so yeah, make sure you check them out and see all the cool changes and marvel at how things are going to be completely different next season. So that's exciting.
And you know what's in there? The information I was asked after a couple of weeks ago is that if you kill the scuttle crab, you get vision for 90 seconds and they can't clear it. Yep. There we go.
Yep. And it shifts to the front of the dragon or Baron pit, regardless of where you kill it.
Yep. And finally, in terms of scene news, we've got a really cool activity, a good event coming up soon, put on by some of the fans of the show, so Modbro and Victor and Tribal and a bunch of other guys, the MoPro stream. So if you have not seen from our tweets, MoPro.
Hashtag MoPro.
It's going to be a charity stream for the Movember, which, if you're not aware, is guys growing mustaches, raising money for men's health and men's health. So, Mike just screwed the hashtag up in the Twitch tag. You can English well.
I'm even on the team. Yeah. I'm doing this stuff, and I stuffed it up.
So we will be talking more about, like, we're sorting out the details, but it's November the 30th. I presume at this stage it's going to be the evening of November the 30th. We've got pro players, we've got ourselves, there's other people involved from the scene who will be involved. It's going to be a great event. Next week, hopefully, we'll have more concrete details of exactly what's going on. But yes, make sure you pencil that in your diary to be involved in. Get your wallets ready because it's going to be a great event you're going to want to contribute to. So, and with that, let's move into some discussion of other things. Now, we didn't actually decide what we were going to talk about, so I'm just going to pick something out. So let's talk about how to close out games. And while, yes, what are we going to talk about there? We'll talk about.
I could have sworn we talked about.
So let's talk about closing out games. Okay. So have we?
Well, pretty sure we've talked about how to close out games before. When NV were famously unable to finish a game until the 49-minute mark or something like that, and then they lost it. That's true. 57 minutes or something.
We won't cover that one again, so I'll check that out and let's talk about the
TLDR version.
TLDR.
Push a side lane.
Yeah. Let's talk about the difference between blue and purple side. So, if you're not aware, there are slight differences between the blue and purple sides of the jungle. Somebody want to go into what they are and let's talk about what sort of impact it makes?
Yeah, I'll start because Victor was the person who asked this question, and I just kind of chucked it in the document and not told you guys, so I've actually thought about it a little bit. There's always some controversy in professional games. Well, not always, but there's always kind of been that they won because they were blue side. Now it's not just the sides of the map that you need to consider when you're discussing blue side and purple side strategies and picks and bans. A lot of it is on the champ select because the blue side bans first and picks first. It means they also ban last and pick last. So blue side is generally considered to have an advantage in a meta where there is like one champion that's overpowered. Because what they can do is they can force bans onto the other team, force them to waste their bans because they don't want to lose the best champion in the game to the first slot. But in meta games where there's a lot of champions that are quite good, then the advantage can arguably go to purple side, where purple side can have that last ban, have it targeted to force them onto something else. Like if there's say 4 powerful champions and none of them are banned, or only one of them like Cassidon is banned, the last purple side ban can be, say, the Tristana, who's really overpowered, forcing the enemy team to pick the only other good AD carry, Lucian or whatever. Just picking these out of examples, they aren't necessarily relevant to exact truth. But so forcing them onto Lucian allows purple side to get a counter pick opportunity. So depending on who's strong or what strategies are being most implemented in the metagame, can make a big difference at champ select. Also, purple side has that last pick. Like we've said on a couple of shows in the past that Tryndamere is a champion that you last pick. Singed is a champion that you last pick. There's a few of those champions. Like you don't pick these champions because they're so easily counterable. But if you're last pick and there's no chance for them to counter you, then purple side has that last slot, which has a lot of power to it as well.
I just wanted to
ahead.
mention the magnitude. So, I mean, when we talk about the blue side advantage, if you look up the statistics, it's about a sort of 52% win rate for blue side as opposed to purple side. So not massive, but certainly enough that it's, over the period, like, over 1 million games, that's going to mean 520,000 wins versus 480,000 losses for purple side. So I guess, in the big scheme of things, it makes a difference, but...
Now, those are solo queue statistics, aren't they? Not pro
yes.
game.
Yeah. In terms of the ranked 5v5s, it's a bit higher. It's about 53.5%. When I've looked at the stats, so it's still. I mean, that's a lot more significant. Probably another. But it's significant enough that I mean, if you started picking champions with a 52% win rate, that's going to have a big impact overall. So it's noticeable.
Yeah, it's a big enough. It's a tiny statistic when you look at it just in terms of percentages, but when you talk about it in raw volume,
yep.
And especially in the pro scene, like if you go, I think I was talking about this last week when we are talking about analysis. You go, this particular scenario has a 52% win rate, so if you've got the option, you go for the one that is more likely to win,
Yep.
even if it's slightly more likely to win. So that's something to consider, like when we're talking about the sheer number of games. If you've got a 1% differential in chance to win by picking blue side, you pick blue side.
Yep.
And again, that does depend on when that data is collected and what other factors there might be. But just as a general rule, 52%, you can't argue with that.
Yep.
I
should probably also mention that something else that comes to mind is with purple side, the camera distance, there's an advantage for blue in terms of vision, in terms of the camera positioning. So blue going down their own lane actually can see further than purple side can see down their lane because of just the nature of where the camera sits, which is something that they're going to deal with when with the new Summoner's Rift, because they're going to change the camera angle to hopefully minimize that a bit. But it's still, I know
it's a slight difference. It's interesting because it's a bigger disadvantage to blue side top lane, but it's a bigger advantage to blue side bottom lane. Yep. Just based on the visual power alone, because when you're in bottom lane, that minimap's not even in your lane, like that's off beyond the brush, and you don't need to worry about that. But when you're a blue side in the top lane, that's like the primary area you're going to get ganked from.
Yeah,
I mean, if you've done the smart thing and warded, then you've got the vision there already, and you're looking in the right spot to begin with. But you can't have wards up all the time if you're going on trinkets and like the way that wards are currently used. So it forces the blue team or the blue side top laner to rely a lot more on wave manipulation for their safety. Like they can push up when they are warded, but they need to be pushed against when they're not warded, or they need to have like wards around dragon or in the enemy jungle, and that's someone else's responsibility. So I'm talking very high level play. Like generally you won't see that kind of sophistication in a solo queue game through bronze up to, platinum, but maybe even beyond that. I don't know. I'm not that high. But so that's just the slight. Those are just kind of hard facts about the map and the side themselves. Now the question actually had a lot more to do with champion picks, compositions for each side. Now, first of all, I want to kind of apologize to listeners because last week when we were talking about the games at PAX, I was just so excited and pumped, and I was just overwhelmed with how awesome the games were. I gave very little analysis, and it was kind of more because I went to PAX for the esports entertainment value rather than the analytical value. So I'm sorry if you tuned in, you didn't get as much out of me as you were expecting. But it gives me the opportunity to kind of talk about it now. Legacy ran Caitlyn Thresh, I think that was right, or Caitlyn and other mobile champions such as Lee Sin, and they ran a purple side strategy where they'd ward up the appropriate places and they would auto attack with Caitlyn across the wall, and they'd jump across the wall to take Baron without having to go through a whole bunch of obviously warded places. That is a perfect example of a purple side composition and a purple side only strat. Like, you can't really do the same on blue side with Dragon. I remember there's like a couple of teams that have done that.
There is one spot still you can do it with Caitlyn.
No, you can reach it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I've seen, I saw what is it, a Elise? Might have been Elise or Nunu, and then it was Caitlyn and support Zyra, and they basically did a 2-minute 50 Dragon. Yeah, I think it was Elise, because she rappelled over the wall at level 3, and then they came around and they snuck Dragon without going up the river. It was very, very clever, just throwing down plants. But that is a very, very difficult strategy to pull off, and it doesn't get you nearly as much game-winning potential as the purple side strat. So that strategy is less viable and less powerful on the blue side. Whereas the opposite is also true. If you want to run a team composition that is based off early game champions and mid game champions and securing dragons, then you can be in a bit of trouble because you've got more. It's easier for purple team to get to dragon because the opening's on their side and they have more jungle entrances and you've got more places to ward. So yeah, there's a few arguments that can be made to and from that, and some champions are very good at shutting that down. Like Rumble with teleport is incredibly he's very important when it comes to that sort of dragon centric early game, mid game team fighting idea. So did you have anything you wanted to add, Rank? I've just been talking for like 5 minutes.
No, it's great. It's great. I'm just sitting here listening to it. This is he's absolutely perfectly right. The blue side, when you're looking at specific picks, obviously doesn't have as much advantage that they can take from specific side strategies. You're looking to play more to the metagame from the blue side. Purple side, yep, you can make specific strategies and calls. Other than that, it's more about the entrances and the access to the pits. Blue side has a lot less control over the dragon than purple side does. Purple side has a lot less control over the Baron. Think about where your early and late game fights go on. Early game, that's where you kind of want a little bit more power slided around the dragon. You're going to see a lot more power put into the dragon from blue side if you want to threaten it. If they pick a team that's not going to have any sort of powerhouse around the dragon and the stage of the game that the dragon's going to be picked up on, blue needs to pick into that, because if they can get snowballing off of that with the harder access to the dragon pit, then they have better access to the Baron pit, and you can snowball off that. You've got to think about that in champion select. On the converse, if they don't get snowballed off of that, or if they have no way to take a dragon, purple side can take somewhat mediocre earlier game dragon attempting champions and have a lot better ways to access the dragon pit. The ramps significantly favor them coming into that area. And that's, again, something you have to think about when you're playing the game at a competitive level from both sides. The dragon, to me, is the more relevant one here because of especially in the Australian scene, because we see a lot more contesting around the dragon pit, because we don't ever see as much Baron play. By the time the Baron becomes an important objective in Australia and the Oceanic meta, the game is pretty much gone at that point. You see a few games go to the point where the Baron does become contestable, and we did see that at PAX. And again, favors blue side. Blue side then has that same ramp setup that the purple side has towards the dragon. So that's it's just how you play the space around the ramps when you're entering those. Yes, you mentioned that you can go over for the dragon over the wall. That is an option, yes, absolutely, but it's about the ramps more than anything. The ramps
Yeah.
affect your more generic
Yeah,
play.
see, for that reason, I would have thought that Purple would have had a stronger control of Dragon just because they've got better brush. You know, they can move in through the brushes down, sort of past the mid lane. You know, if
And they
there's-
do.
If yeah, okay. So I thought you said Blue
I
have an
think
earlier
it's-
control.
No, Blue have better control over Baron. Purple
Oh,
have
did
better
you? Okay,
control
sorry,
over
I got
Dragon.
confused.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah,
you said the other way
absolutely.
around. I'm thinking, hang on, I would have thought that that's the
Yeah.
case because Purple
But yeah,
have a much better
if
way.
if you think about it in just post-fight scenarios, like if you're like Baron, for example, if you're purple side, let's start with blue. If you're blue side, you take Baron and then you immediately exit the pit.
Yeah.
And you go straight towards your blue buff or down through the brush near towards towards the mid tower area. If you're purple side and you finish that,
You have to go a long
either
ass way to
recall
get
right
around.
where you are, or you've
Yeah.
got like a 7-second walk to
Yeah.
get to anywhere remotely close to recall.
Yeah.
And take into account that if you're still fighting Baron, if you're halfway through that Baron fight,
Yeah.
Blue have a much safer exit strategy because they can just ward over the wall and they'll see Purple coming from their base. Purple don't have that same luxury.
Yeah, that's it.
So, yeah, that's exactly it.
And
So,
the last thing you want to do when you're trying to go for Baron or Dragon is get pushed into the pit. Like that is the death zone. Like that is
Yeah.
that is not where you want to be. So really, that
Yeah.
easy access for
That's actually one of
Purple
my
on
favorite
Dragon
moments
Blue.
in esports. One of my favorite moments in esports is when, whenever a support goes to put a ward near the Baron, or like over the Baron wall in the brush near the red buff on Purple top side, and then they just get like hooked or Lee Sin queued. And they just get disintegrated, and the game snowballs off that one ward attempt. I'm like, oh, you poor support, you're just trying to do your job, and they need that vision there. They can't not have that vision there.
Yeah, that's
for
it, yeah,
that engagement. So like that brush alone is a massive purple disadvantage. So it's stuff like that. Like I say massive disadvantage. We're talking statistically, 2 to 4%, 52 to 48, yeah, so like that kind of stuff can make a difference. Blue team don't need to worry about that. They can still get sandboxed in the same way that Purple do, but it just happens far less likely.
Yeah.
And Dragon dies so much easier than Baron does more often. Like if you see a Dragon fight, it's like, okay, we're not able to get there in time to contest it, the Dragon immediately dies. If it's, Jace is there poking him and everything, then like the Dragon takes longer, obviously, because they can't fully commit to burning down that Dragon. So,
I mean, it's also the fact that you
like
can
on
lure the
that
Dragon
note,
out of it.
You just mentioned. Sorry, can I just interrupt here? You
Yeah,
just
you go,
mentioned
yeah.
something, an important factor. Jace and poke comps, I believe, from my experience, favor the blue side around Dragon and the purple side around Baron because they have better openings. Their ramps favor coming more from the river in mid and pushing down and poking straight across the pit, which works better for those long range poke skill shots.
Yep.
It's especially good for Jace specifically. And
Jace, Xerath, and Lux, I think, are the three main ones you're looking for.
I think Ziggs quite has. If Ziggs is on your team, same thing. He can steal the Baron or throw down his ball with much less risk than he would be if he was on one of the disadvantaged teams. So.
Hey man, all you need is a level 1 Hurricane from Jano. That's all it takes.
Oh man, that's gonna be XDG's legacy.
Yeah, that's
isn't
it.
Like
That's it.
That team was known for two things: making it to Worlds and that one steal.
Yeah, best steal ever. I can't think of a better steal.
No, I think you're right there. Well, then again, the best steal I've seen was like a YouTube clip. I'm getting so distracted here. There was a YouTube clip of a guy who was just playing solo queue, and he was Draven, and he just goes, "Oh, I can't see anyone on the map. I bet they're at Baron."
Yeah.
Yeah, they're probably at Baron. He goes into shop, he buys like just an item or whatever. He goes, "Yeah, they've got to be at Baron. Whatever, let's see what happens." And he throws out his no vision at all, throws out his ult, and he kills a champion on the way out, and then steals the Baron with the axes on the way back.
Nice. That is cool.
I'm like, that's bravo. That's a brilliant. No vision at all, just random timing. Brilliant.
All right, is there anything else you guys want to add before we move on? Because I think we've probably talked about that one a fair bit.
All time, I believe, is Victor in the chat. I need to watch names more. Has just mentioned differences based on starting buff. I mean, it is a little bit more relevant for when you're viewing maybe a Wick or a Wick's okay, but more a Moo. Maybe a Blitzcrank, really, if you're thinking about doing Blitzcrank, even though, but if you mana manage, you're fine. Like
Yeah.
even which side you start on, you can start on the other side. It doesn't really matter. Like the way the jungle is at the moment, this will immediately change as soon as we get into preseason because the difficulty of the jungle is going to be ramped up through the roof.
Yeah.
But you should be able to manage without that blue buff for at least until you get to your blue buff. If you manage your mana correctly. If the minions are sitting at randomly low amounts of health, just auto attack them to death. Do not cast tantrum. What is wrong with you people?
I mean, it's probably like in terms of the starting path. I mean, really for early gankers, Lee Sin, Elise, Jarvan, Rammus. I mean, actually, somebody asked about Rammus in the Twitch chat about why is Rammus so good. If you're on a red side, you can go blue, red, gank. And with somebody like a Rammus or Lee Sin, they can engage pretty hard. So, obviously that's a path. If you want to gank bot, it's much easier to go that way. And if you want to gank top, it's much better for the purple side. Actually, in terms of dodging wards, I mean, someone like a Jarvan can, on both sides, really. I mean, he particularly can go, if he's on purple side, can easily get into the brush right down by the bottom of the river just because he sort of hops over the wall. There's a few champs that can do that, where they can just sort of hop straight from
Kha'Zix,
Yeah, so that's worth keeping in mind. I mean, most people these days are warding outside of that brush. They're sort of warding a bit up more towards the dragon pit. So, that's worth keeping in mind. If you want to gank and you're on purple side, you can hop over that brush with certain junglers.
And that's where support communication is vital to that sort of thing. Like, you can get gank without a sweep, but if you're correctly communicating with your support, and if you are a support player, that is certainly, when you have a jungler like that, that's something to definitely be on top of.
There's you did remind me, Ranconius, of one particular aspect of the purple side, blue side discussion that we haven't actually touched on. That I'll touch on briefly. I won't go into a great amount of detail because I could talk for hours. Is that level 1 invade strategies? Like if you're on purple side, and you know that your matchup, the opponent will want to do a lane swap or really doesn't want to do a lane swap. If their motives are clear, then your opportunities for invasion and getting in wards in spots that'll provide a lot more information. That advantage will go to purple side if the invasion is done properly. Like you can run straight down the bot lane and into the tri-brush, circle around, and try and get a gank on their red buff, or just steal it and 3-buff them without them having any knowledge. Whereas to do the same sort of thing from blue side onto purple, like the vision that you're gonna get, it's like, oh look, their top lane is going to top lane, or neither because he took a different route. There's so many different ways that the top laner can get back to top lane, which is a very different story for the bottom laners. So,
I don't what you see a little bit of blue team is they go up, sort of up past the double golems, and then basically plonk a ward in between the turrets. So that's something that I've seen a few times in professional play of how blue side try to get that early vision if they think there's going to be a lane swap. Having said that, lane swaps don't happen often in like a solo queue environment, not at least that I've seen. So,
which is a crime.
Well, yeah.
Having said that as well, like you said, the ward for purple side is a lot less risky for a lot higher reward. If you get that ward into the back of the red buff bush, you're more than likely going to spot someone. If you're on the opposite side, mid lane, might run a planker ward there, but top lane might run down plonk their trinket ward there, and then they'll go straight back up and sit in a tri-brush. You're not going to get as much. Oh look, it's a top laner. Oh look, it's a squishy support. Level 1, if it's a Leona, they're incredibly engageable upon. Janna, Nami, there are a lot more supports and things that you can engage on rather than a top laner at level 1. Top laner is just, level 1, they got better base stats.
Well, since we're talking about junglers, let's talk a bit about Rammus, because we had this question in the Twitch chat. We'll probably go on from there. We'll talk about maybe the scaling and itemization and new players learning it. So why is Rammus... The question is, why is Rammus so good at the moment? I've played it as with and against. He is strong, but I don't see why, because there are other junglers with better kits that are not as good. I don't know. Why is Rammus so good at the moment?
Well, I've got a 2-word answer, so I'll let you guys talk for a bit, and then I'll give my 2-word
Okay.
answer.
I see what you did there. I mean, I think in a solo queue environment, the fact that he can just run past wards, and he moves so fast. You put mobility boots on him, and nobody's going to get away from a Rammus if you're pushed up. And he can, and he's moving so fast he can actually move. If a minion wave comes up, he can move up, come around the minion wave, and can come down and get you anyway. So I think it's just that extreme pressure, like those extreme sort of the pressure that comes from ganks. That's probably what I'd say. He does actually do a reasonable amount of damage, and once you start building up his defense, It's pretty good. We did see in Battle Arena, we should make mention, of an iEdge Rammus last week, who just pretty much destroyed people left, right, and center. It was actually incredibly impressive, and I think it was a Silver 4 player who went and destroyed about 3 gold players with this Infinity Edge. I think it was Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer.
No, Static Shiv.
Static Shiv. Sorry, yeah.
Static Shiv for the lightning damage.
Yeah,
lightning.
It was disgusting. It was brutal.
It was hilarious, is what it was.
Whether this guy was.
He had a thorn mail.
No, I was.
Oh my god. How do you even play into that?
I don't know.
Yeah,
it was like basically, well, really the AP character, like it was Ari, I think, needed to charm and then basically instantly kill him, but she was too far behind.
Yeah.
Like, all right, good game.
Yeah.
You know, it just got completely failed.
I'm pretty sure the Twitch chat, there was just somebody who said, I just had no idea how to deal with it. Because the thing is, you think Rammus, okay, you get taunted, no problems. But this Rammus is now hitting you and critting your face off, and you can't help but stand there and take the damage. It's actually quite ingenious.
We saw a 2-shot at one point.
Yeah. You got a massive crit and just went boom. It was hilarious.
Support and 2 hits.
Yeah. Anyway, Steve, you had a
2-word answer.
2-word answer.
Infinity Edge. That is my answer.
Okay.
Infinity Edge. Infinity Edge is by far the most effective marksman item in the game at the moment. We're seeing people buy it in mid lane. We're seeing people buy it in top lane. We're seeing people buy it in the bot lane, of course.
And the jungle.
And the jungle, well, less so, but we do see it again. Like, you'll see it in solo queue because the item is so strong, and like the amount of damage that it puts out has made a lot of champions like Tristana, Jinx, Vayne. Maybe less so Vayne. She scales a lot better with attack speed, but she still benefits greatly from that item. Anyone who really builds it has become much more stronger in the metagame, and Rammus is so good at dealing with people who rely on auto attacks. That's kind of his thing. It's like, oh, you're going to auto attack me? Take that damage back yourself. And because lifesteal is so weak at the moment, like you'll see a Bloodthirster as a 4th item or so. You'll see Blade of the Ruined King on Vayne and a couple of Duelist characters that are slightly, they show up every now and then. Like the numbers game is so heavily stacked on Infinity Edge characters' side that Rammus is just, his win rate is just naturally going to go up because he beats those. That pretty much sums up Rammus. I mean, there are other reasons like the movement speed not being countered by a less mobile metagame at the moment, but I really, statistically speaking, I would say that is the main reason why his win rate has been so much higher since the change to Infinity Edge and Bloodthirster and all that happened a while ago.
So I'm just thinking about who you can use to, particularly in the bottom lane, who you can use to sort of defend, to play against a Rammus. I'd say Thresh is pretty good because he can flay Rammus away and apply it slow.
You've got to have pretty Twitch, no pun intended. You've got to have pretty Twitch reflexes to do that though. Like, because if you stuff up that flay and the taunt goes off successfully with defensive ball curl up, then your AD carry's probably still gonna die, but you might live. Like
that's true. I mean, the other one is Alistair. Alistair's pretty good because he can headbutt them away.
Yeah,
and then stops the rollers at the same time, which is the.
Oh, does it? Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, because he has to impact them for the headbutt to actually go off.
Yeah, okay.
And that stops the roll. Powerball.
Yeah. Really, I think the strongest champion against that is going to be a Corki, just because he does so much. Just like he builds sorcerer's shoes half the time.
Yep.
And he's based more off a mix of spells and auto attacks, so he's punished far less by auto attacking than any other AD carry that's in meta at the moment.
And probably, I mean, I would have thought Vayne would do alright as well, just because of the true damage and the fact he builds Bork. So it's like, okay, okay, I'm hitting you, you're doing damage to me through your defensive Borkle and maybe through Thornmail, but I don't care because I shred your armor and I'm doing max health damage. So I would have thought, I mean...
It depends on the Vayne player then. I think
it does, yeah. And I mean, it's only if she gets ahead. If she doesn't get ahead, she's never going to... she's going to get punished. But if she can actually get a lead early, which is not out of the realm of possibility, I think she can build those early damage items. She can go into a Bork. She can go into other things, and then just wreck face.
So we're talking Veritas into Kadra Negium at Armageddon,
Yeah,
level
pretty
there?
much.
Which we've already discussed on another note.
Yes. Oh, basically, well, if you want to go see a great Vayne player, Veritas is it at the Oceanic Finals. All right, well, before we finish up, let's talk about scaling and itemization. So this is a question again from Victor. How does a new player learn about scaling and itemization? So, Rank, how about you take that one first? What do you reckon about scaling and itemization?
It's literally just like the best way to learn it is actually just to sit down and play it or watch guides and videos. Like I've been starting to pick up Smite myself, so I'm not brand new to MOBAs, so I understand that aspect and how warding and stuff works. So that's nice to me. But I've been sitting down and trying to figure out who's good when, what's an assassin, what makes an assassin in this game, is it different to League? So for me, it's just been sitting down and actually playing it, and then I can refer it back to another game. If you can do that for somebody, that's fantastic. If you can't, then it's literally for them. It's just they have to sit down, they have to learn about it, they have to play through it. They have to know what the other champions do, so to know what the other champions do, they have to play the other champions, or they have to play against them repetitively. So that's about the only way. It's really, really hard.
We've come back to Poppy now, haven't we? Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's time and energy. It's inefficient in that aspect, but there's nothing you can do to properly learn the game and what's going on. You either have to sit down and watch, or you just have to sit down and do. And for me, 95% of people will learn better by sit down and doing rather than sit down and watching, because they need to know what they need to be doing to sit down and watch.
I think this is mainly going to be a question for people who play a lot of League and watch a little bit of esports, not necessarily Oceanic, but like, because if you play, say, 10, 20 games of League a week, and then all of a sudden, I forgot the LCS is on right now, I'll switch that on. And then they're talking about scaling champions and all that sort of stuff. You're like, well, what are they talking about? Like, there's nothing in, like, I highlight every little window in every little shop icon or my passive or whatever. There's nothing about scaling or anything. What are they talking about? So it'll be those people that are looking to learn more about the game, and they've discovered this thing called scaling. Like we've talked about it on the podcast, and I feel bad for not really clarifying it, that Tristana has kind of a late game scaling, and the reason she has a late game scaling is because she has the longest auto attack range in the game late game, and her auto attacks do just a ton of damage late game.
Lies. She has the longest auto attack without cooldown. Twitch has the longest auto attack.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Well,
I would have thought it's a Q. So I mean, her auto attack is just an auto attack. It's the combination of the attack speed steroid, the resets on kills, which gives her heaps of mobility, and the range.
Yeah,
so
and she can't really take advantage of that before the late game. She's very similar to Ryze in the fact that Ryze is someone who, once they have items, and once they have cooldown reduction, and once they've got mana, once they've got all of these things that they require, they're basically unstoppable. So that's something like... And then you look on the flip side, you look at someone like Renekton, where you walk into lane, and he like just walks up to you and kills you at level 2. You're like, whoa! Yeah. What is going on?
Yeah.
He like, all of Renekton's strength, well, the majority of Renekton's strength, is in his early game. It really, like, he can scale late if he gets ahead, but that's all indicative of his early game power. So he's gonna just dash into you, cut you, jump back. His stats are going to be monstrous when he pops his ultimate. Everything around that early laning phase is just absolutely terrifying about Renekton. But once the late game comes around, once you've bought yourself, some speed 2 boots, or you've finally got all of your skills and enough armor to withstand that kind of harass, Renekton really drops off in power. So that's where a lack of scaling would hurt Renekton.
For example, with Renekton, like his ability to slice and dive through minions, stun you, cull them which is a Q, and then duck out. That's less effective when there's no minions because you grouped up as a 5. When you've got essentially got to cross all this distance to the whole team, which has a support. Like 1v1ing your top laner is a whole different story from trying to dive on the carrier who's got a support. If you think about someone like a Janna or like a Lulu, like a Nami, like you dive at your carry and Nami goes, no thanks, I'll knock you up. Oh, no thanks, I'll wave you. No thanks, I'll Janna knocks you up as well. She blows you back with Monsoon. Like, basically the strengths you have in the laning phase don't matter at that point of the game. So I mean, it's something like that. Same with like, sorry, go.
Yeah, it's also like Jax can deal with Renekton later on, but he can't early game because he has no way to stick to Renekton. He has no way to get the counter strike off on Renekton. When Renekton slices, he just says, "Oh look, you hear stun runs away." Now what's Jax gonna do? Jax has to leap after, but he can't do that in the early game.
Once he's got his Blade of the Ruin King, that Renekton is dead.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not. It's not even that so much as once he's got his leap strike up all the time. That's like Jax's real strength versus a Renekton is once he's hit level 13 point where he's maxed out his Q. It's only a 2-second cooldown. Renekton just gets jumped on and jumped on and jumped on and jumped on, and Renekton requires that time to build back up onto his cooldowns, and he just doesn't has it. That's what he has in the early game. Is that he has these cooldowns that do a large amount of damage, and the opposition has no way to respond. Is what he has.
Yeah, and then you've got champions like you've got Janna and you've got like Rumble, good mid-game champions where most of their power comes from having their ult and maybe that first item. Like Rumble with like a Haunting Guise and Sorcerer's Shoes, contesting a dragon fight is one of the most powerful things in the metagame right now. You go into Dragon, you see that Equalizer come down. It does so much damage because you haven't had a chance to build Negatron Cloak yet.
Yep.
And your team is slowed and they're burning and like, oh my goodness, what do we do? You've been aced, But as it gets closer and closer to the later game where that, like, people have Banshee's Veils, and if he hasn't built that into a Landry's Torment, if he hasn't taken advantage of that mid-game power spike, then he's a lot less effective. He can still do things in the game. He'll do a lot more than a Renekton will do in the late game. He won't do nearly as much as a Jax will do in the late game, but again, that massive weakness in lane that Jax has really early. So he can go, oh, whatever, I'm just going to stay safe. I'll push when the minion waves are in my favor. I won't when they're not here. Like, you can just get through the laning phase on Rumble through smart play and then make your play in team fights. So that's where mid-game champions really have their strength, is because they don't suck at anything, but they're really good in the mid-game. When almost no one else has their items and you have everything you need to be successful. And that's kind of the message, is when is this champion successful? Like we saw like the opposite of that in Battle Arena the other night, where we saw Lulu into Jax and Jax just completely dumpster early game. We're like, what is going on in this top lane? How is this happening? So it's not a universal rule. Like whenever we talk about this, we're talking about people of equal skill in normal situations rather than like a bronze against a gold or someone with a crappy internet connection. Like there's always exceptions to these rules, but these are just yeah, there we go.
Me the other day.
There are just but as a general rule, Tristana always a monster late game. Even if she goes 0-2 in the laning phase, once the game gets to 40 minutes, she's just passive gold, has enough for an Infinity Edge, just through passive experience, has enough for 5 points in her queue. You're dead. It doesn't matter that you were, you went 4-0 in the laning phase on Ezreal. Your scaling is nowhere near what it is on Tristana.
Yep.
Ezreal throws out his little Q things and they do nothing. Like, they just bounce off your Renekton. He's, as we've just said, not a late game champion. So.
Yep. Yeah, but it comes down to understanding your champions, understanding the enemy champions. So really about matchups, which is something I know the Trinity Force podcast talked about, I think last Thursday for us. So, check them out. But, I mean, really it's about understanding, like you said, when champions are strong. So that includes items, that includes abilities, and how that compares to your own. So if you're playing, early game, so something like a Lee Sin, you don't want to go to late game. A Pantheon, I guess even someone like a Nocturne to an extent. There's lots of champions where, you don't want to go to 40 minutes for those champions. You want to close out the game as quickly as possible. But if you got Ryze, Vayne, some of like those guys, like you're happy to sort of slow the game down, wait, because you know that when you get those items, you will just destroy your opponents.
Rancunius, you might be able to remind me. I tweeted about this. It was one of the PAX games where one of the teams, I can't remember which team or what game or even what series it was, but one team was very far ahead, and then but they had Tristana and Yasuo, and they both got their Infinity Edges, even though they were like 6k behind or 4k behind. And
I have a
it was
feeling
game
that
two.
was an AV. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
It was
and
definitely. It feels like the AV Legacy series, and AV were behind.
Mhm.
And then they just all of a sudden hit this item threshold. They hit Static Shiv and Infinity Edge on. I think they had a third Static Shiv and Infinity Edge in there somehow.
yeah, it wasn't at the exact same time. Like it came later, but you're
It
absolutely
was
right.
within. Yeah, it was
Yeah, but
within. The first two were like within 30 seconds of each other, finishing
Yeah.
both of those items.
Yeah, that was that was Tristana and Yasuo, and they were behind a ton. But because they had that massive power spike, we've got the items to matter now, and they turned that game around and won, and they pushed it to a game 3. So that's that's just an example of a power spike. Like when Tristana has 5 points in a queue and she has an Infinity Edge, late game has begun. Like that's basically how you tell.
Yep.
Arguments can be made about exactly when late game, like mid game transitions into late game, because it depends entirely on the exact game you're looking at. But that's definitely a good indicator.
Now we
Yeah, well,
just
that's
sorry.
another-
Oh,
That's,
go.
sorry, can I just interrupt shortly?
Yeah.
That's a good point as well. You mentioned scalings, and this is what this entire thing has been about. Scalings are great, and the numbers and whatnot are all, but it's all about items. Late game only kicks in when certain item thresholds have been reached. Mid game only kicks in when certain item thresholds and levels have been hit.
Yep.
It's all about that. It's not actually about a specific point in time in any
Yeah.
of the games.
It's not
If
like
Jax-
13 and a half minutes. That's when mid game ends or whatever. It's like
If Jax hits 4
fine.
items, it's late game. Forget it. The game's
Yeah.
over. Jax has won.
And,
Yeah.
and if a Corki gets gets an ace at level 1, and comes back with a Sheen, like that's the mid game.
Game is not over.
Yeah.
No, that's the mid game, but game is not over.
Yeah, the
That's
game's not
nowhere
over, yeah.
near the late game.
Yep.
It just makes your bottom lane incredibly difficult, but because of Corki's mana cost early on, not actually all that hard.
Yep.
yeah.
It's actually that one's a lot easier to deal with, but it's
I remember Korea had this metagame for a while with the 2-0 split push strategy that we were talking about, where they had no early game. Like, early game just wasn't a thing. They're like, we're just going to take champions, we're going to go into the jungle, we're immediately going to take down a tower, and then we're going to start roaming and taking dragons and towers. It's like, we're not going to lane at all. Like, the early game was over, and it wasn't necessarily an item requirement even then. It was just, our heroes or our champions are so much better right now. You're going to fight us, we'll kill you. We're just going to take this tower. And they use the gold lead to kind of snowball out of control and win the games those ways. That meta has since passed, but that's an example of how mid-game, early game, late game are not fixed points in time.
So, I mean,
exactly.
we just...
Sorry, yeah, keep going.
I was going to say, we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I thought we'd answer this question from Modbro in the Twitch chat. So he asked, what is an example of an early game invade comp? If I wanted to invade hard to crush early, what would a good team comp be? So in terms of supports, you'd want someone with a hard CC, so Thresh, Blitzcrank,
is
Morgana.
easily the number one priority
Yeah.
for that sort of strategy.
Um,
Thresh's death sentence is incredibly useful. Actually, Thresh in general, because any of his abilities you can buy at level 1 has some use in an invade or a defensive invade strategy, because you can get vision with your hook where you wouldn't be, with your lantern, your dark passage where you wouldn't be able to. Your death sentence can literally be a death sentence to whoever you grab. Your flay can be enough for your team to just completely just obliterate that one person or save one person, depending on the situation.
Probably Caitlyn's not bad at... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Caitlyn's pretty good.
Because she's got a snap trap, so if you can
yeah,
manage to actually get somebody on one of those, it's a pretty substantial
delicious
stun.
cupcakes.
Yep.
Delicious cupcakes.
And then she can just kite so well as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned Blitzcrank. Blitzcrank is, yes, the best level 1 champion, but also the worst at the same time. He has the longest cooldown on pretty much a level 1 ability, but it's the
Yeah.
most impactful at level 1.
Yeah.
It can either be, yes, we've won level 1, or no, we've completely and utterly failed level 1, forget the game.
I mean, probably in some ways a better level 1 champion, if you can do it right, is Nami, because she can actually...
one bubble.
CC, yeah, one bubble can CC a bunch of people. I mean, it's harder to hit, but it just means that you actually can snag a couple of kills or burn a couple of flashes with a Nami. I don't think there's really anybody else in terms of supports. Leona's okay. Alistair's okay. I mean, if Flash Pulverize, it's expensive to do, but it's pretty good. In terms of mids, so Victor mentioned a Twisted Fate, a gold card. It really comes down to hard CC. Any form of hard CC is the winning thing in an early invade comp. So Rise,
Anyone,
if you're looking
TF.
if you want to go
staying
slightly deeper,
in the jungle, or keep going, Steve.
yeah. I was just going to say, if you want to look a little deeper, you want to look at a champion that has a very strong level 1, but not as good as an opponent level 2, because when we're talking supports and AD carries, because you want to be able to use that power at level 1, and you want to avoid the enemy power spike at level 2 or 3, So a hard invasion is actually quite a good strategy when your level 2 is going to be a bit weaker, because then you can just go, well, we got the experience advantage from taking their blue or whatever.
Yeah.
So what were you going to say, Rank?
I was actually going to say, this question could also be focused slightly more on not just a level 1, but it could be focused a little bit slightly further on. And if you're looking post level 3 and looking to stay in your opposition's jungle, Lee Sin, obviously fantastic. Shaco is very hit and miss. He's basically the Blitzcrank of this category. He can get in there and he can harass you and he can get you out of the jungle. But at the same time, he doesn't clear the jungle and can generate enough XP to make a lead off that. He has to kill you or it's over.
Yeah,
That is where Shaco really sits at the moment. He will be reworked this season. He's in the pipeline, so...
It's the best and worst thing about Shaco. Is, if you get that kill, oh baby. If you don't, damn. Yeah, and that's actually part of the late game, early game, mid game discussion that we didn't really touch on, was duelists in the jungle, which very much comes into the sort of level 1 idea, invasion strategies, is that if someone is good at killing the enemy jungler, or someone else, someone's good at picking someone off, they have strengths going into the enemy jungle.
And that's really only an early or mid game thing, because after a certain point, they're not going to just find them roaming around the jungle. Once you get to the really once you get to the mid game, it becomes a lot, you're not going to spend as much time farming in the jungle. So counter jungle is not really worth it, because they're going to be in their base, or they're going to be a dragon or something. So really, it's an early
And if you're trying to steal their wraiths and they're roaming as 5, you are dead, sir. Yeah. You are dead.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there any final thoughts on that before we wrap things up? Because we've reached about an hour. So, any final thoughts on early game comps?
I think we've covered it quite nicely. There's always more to talk about. As someone who studies these strategies, I could go on. There was a strategy that was used in Season 2 by, I think it was CLG. It was either CLG or TSM, where they charged straight down the bottom lane into the Tri-Brush, and then they proxy farmed behind the wave with Vayne, and basically Vayne Thresh? I can't remember who the support was. But they proxy farmed the first wave or the first 2 waves, and they had such a massive laning advantage. But I've never seen that strategy used again. And that was all because of just the way that they knew that they had such an invasion strength over the enemy team that they knew they weren't going to get caught, because the enemy team would just be looking to avoid them at all costs.
Yeah, you know what, the level 1 strat I really wish still existed but doesn't, is when Twisted Fate, when his teleport was on one of his abilities, he'd teleport into the delayed brush, the midway that they drop a ward, everybody TPs to that ward, gets a level 1 gank, before the game's even started. It's so good.
And you know what else is also a level 1 strat? Karthus and Nivea, Zac. Who else do you want to throw in there?
Oh, you're talking about the 5-lane mid push strat where was it? Oh no, was it where Rammus Powerball Ghost? No, teleport Powerballs up to the top lane, the brush closest to the enemy tower, chucks down a ward, everyone else teleports to it, and they take the top tower and then just push to the inhib in 5 minutes. Love that. It's so hilarious.
There's that. There's also another one involving 480 carries and a Mumu. Mumu takes the wave in top... No, serious, this is a strategy.
Yeah, okay.
Mumu takes the top wave, and because every time he gets auto-attacked by an enemy unit, including jungle creeps, of course, that's how he clears the jungle. It reduces the cooldown on these tantrums. So they just clear the wave at level 1. It's just tantrum. Now what? Your wave's gone.
It's funny, when we had Hexakill on Summoner's Rift, I actually had I was watching a community game with a bunch of OzLoL people, and they took 6 AD carries and pushed top the entire time as a group of 6. They won that game so easily. It was hilarious. There was
are
a moment,
counter strategies to it.
yeah.
they-
There was a Yasuo on the enemy team, and he got a hexa-kill. He got a hexa-kill against them.
Okay.
I've got the video. It's in my archive somewhere.
Alright, nothing is more crazy than GSG versus CJ Enters Jungle Harmony, best game ever of League, without a doubt. Anyway, alright, with all this
we're getting
nostalgia,
distracted.
let's move into some shout outs and then we'll finish up. And I want to give, firstly, a shout out to Ralph, because, again, for being a part of us. And actually, what I forgot to mention, and I haven't actually told him this, but I just wanted to say that that Scott's actually, we were going to make him an official part of the OzLoL podcast, if he's willing to take it. If he rejects us right now, that would be bad and embarrassing, but presuming that he's okay with the
Is this
notion.
where I turn off my camera and run, or
I don't know.
Just take off your headset, drop it on the keyboard.
Yeah, that's it. Just like, done,
Boom.
drop mic. That's going to work out really well, and the editor's going to love that banging around.
It's alright. I painted the picture for the crowd.
Yeah. So, so shout out to you, Ranconius, for being a new member of the OzLoL podcast. And hopefully you won't be
Steve, I have some bad
the
news.
last.
Carrot has just asked me to annoy you for the rest of our OzLoL days.
Yes, this is actually my secret strat for driving out Steve. So I can, because it's like
Timo hack,
Stalin.
isn't it? That's where this plot came from.
He is my I'm his Stalin to his what's the other guy? Anyway, they tried
Hitler?
to. You're gonna end up being stabbed to death with an ice pick in Mexico. I'm just saying. Just saying. Just warning you ahead of time.
Just AV immunity.
Yeah.
rivalry.
Trotsky, that's it. Leon Trotsky. You are Leon Trotsky, and I'm Joseph Stalin.
Ice pick in Mexico.
Yeah, I'm telling
Yeah.
you. Read some history, man.
Your instructions are clear. I'll see
Yeah,
you.
that's it. That's it.
See you on spring break. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the shout outs for me. Do you guys have any shout outs before we finish up?
Shout out to everyone involved in the Mobro.
MoPro.
Mopro. I keep calling it Mobro because Bro's involved. So, everyone involved in Mopro. And that's a shout out to anyone who is not currently on the list but is going to be joining in future, because no, it's awesome to see you guys and everyone giving to the community and to support causes and all that normal stuff.
Thanks, man. Internet high five.
Yeah.
That actually worked out quite well.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so keen for that. I'm on the team, so big shout out to Mobro and his promo MoPro hype. But yeah, no.
That's a
I
great
think this is the part where I say a shout out to my fiance, because a lot of the I went through a lot of depression lately, and she got me to still be here, still be doing this and everything I love. Shout out to everyone that's ever said anything nice to me anywhere.
Okay.
That goes for Chuff. Chuff said something really nice to me the other day, which was fantastic. Any of my casting fans, is a really, really nice guy in America that anytime I cast something, he's there and he's just like, oh my god, it's that right guy! Ha! And it's fantastic. But anyone that's ever said anything nice to anyone deserves a shout out, because you don't know what those people are going through, and you could have just saved a life.
Cool. All right. Well, with that brings us to the end of OzLoL Podcast episode 63. Remember, of course, Battle Arena this Thursday from 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Join the OzLoL chat room. And yeah, make sure you send us your questions. We really want your questions. And with that, I declare this at an end. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again next week.
Good evening.